savoir-faire. No, we got one more minute. Don't want to be jumping the gun. Someone might miss the pledge.
Some things don't go away. 28 Harbor Street.
Well, I don't think it was first on the list today, but it's near the top of the list to review with the new guy who started today.
Oh, we started today?
He did.
Good.
Yeah, he showed up. I went down to check. Said, all right, good, you're here.
We showed up, that's it.
I think.
My daughter went to school with your son.
What's that?
My daughter Tara went to school with your son Gardner.
Oh, really? Where?
Yeah.
At
Cannabis High School.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They graduated. They're in the same class.
All right, I think
Yeah.
we'll start. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the June 1st Selectmen's Meeting. I'd ask to rise and ask Selectman Bennett to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention the Town Hall did open today, and the public buildings are reopening as we speak. And to that effect, people who have had both vaccinations and passed their incubation period are welcome to join us with or without masks. I've had mine. We're in close proximity, so wearing masks at this point is if you haven't received your 2 shots or you're single, whichever the one was a single, we ask that you wear a mask. If not, it's up to a personal preference to continue to do so till you have a comfort for it, or not. So everybody here has made their own choice, and I support that. At this time, I'll ask for an approval of minutes of May 20th.
So moved.
Motion made to, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the minutes of May 20th, 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, we'll take up new public business. That is, any business that's not already on the agenda for the evening. Is there anyone here with new public business? Mr. Bates.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Bates, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4. I have some copies. Could I bring those up to you?
You may.
7 of them. I have some.
Thank you.
I won't take up much of your time. I just wanted to share a situation that fellow town meeting member Tim Donahue from Precinct 4 has signed on to this letter that I just presented to the selectman, the town manager, and the clerk. What we're concerned with is we're afraid we have an issue with modular homes in the town of Danvers. And it's a perceived, we think there's some safety issues. And we know that the state has fallen down their responsibility at the Division of Professional Licensure and the Board of Building Regulations and Standards when it comes to modular homes. And there is a history in this town, there is a history in this state of these buildings not being up to code and coming into our town. And as a town meeting member, Tim and I would like to write a bylaw for the next town meeting that would put a temporary moratorium on the use of modular homes in the town of Danvers until the state and the town have more direct actions of how they're inspected. And we would just appreciate any assistance that the staff or selectmen can help us with this. Thank you.
Mr. Donahue, did you want to say anything? As well as seeing as you both signed it, I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Hi, Tim Donahue, Precinct 4 meeting member. Yes, so we went out to the Christie's house and took a look at everything that's going on. I've been paying attention. Mr. Bates has obviously involved me in this, and it's piqued my interest to see what has been going on. Being in the trades, it's definitely taken interest, and working in that neighborhood, I've been watching that house not progress like many others in town. What's been revealed to me is there's an obvious disconnect between town and state, and there's a huge problem in the modular homes and whose responsibility is to enforce it. So at this time, looking at what's going on that property, looking at the history of properties, several in Danvers, it is a strong concern that we are unable to represent people properly, and there's a true failure between state and town in properties and modular homes such as these. So at this time, I am concerned that we are doing a disservice to people who are trying to do these. Through this disconnect, we are unable to service them, and neither is the state. So at this time, I think it is a good idea that we not allow modular homes in town until issues like this are resolved. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about with it, but I'd be happy to, with my limited knowledge, I'd be happy to discuss anything.
Sure. So thank you for this, both of you. Couple of things that I'll mention and ask the town manager for some comments. First of all, a moratorium, in order for a moratorium to be engaged, it has to have a specific issue and a specific resolution that can be resolved within a year. No moratorium can last more than a year per law. So this would need a resolution, and it would need a resolution that the town can affect. We can't affect state law. We can't affect the speediness or the timeliness of of state departments. So I understand the concern. I understand the direction. So a moratorium would is a legal mechanism that needs to have legal recourse and resolution within a year. And the town cannot initiate or compel, and has not been able to compel state government to react and respond in a timely manner. That being said, we can also not supersede state law. I'm not getting into the specifics of the current case that you're talking about. That's an ongoing issue with the town and the state and the people who are directly affected. My suggestion is, and I'll then turn it over to the town manager, is that if you wish to see zoning changes or other changes that affect that issue, including zoning enforcement, that this would be an opportunity to speak to the planning board. But it appears to be something that would fall into that kind of zoning enforcement, code enforcement, that sort of issue. The town feels it has taken the appropriate measures it has and gone through the steps it may per the state law, but I understand your position, and I'll ask the town manager to comment.
Mr. Chairman, you summed it up fairly well. I don't know that the modular homes are governed by regulation at the state. I do know former Representative Speliotis had at one point filed legislation that he felt would cure some of the disconnect between building code and modular regulations. I don't know whether we have the authority to prohibit by zoning or moratorium the delivery and installation of these homes. They are regulated by the state. That said, both of these individuals have identified several instances in Danvers where there has been a disconnect between the regulatory processes and the authority of the local building inspectors. We can certainly answer the last question here, which is how many modular homes have been installed in Danvers since 1994. But we would, with respect to the question of whether town meeting had this authority, that's a question the town attorney would have to weigh in on.
Sure. So I'd ask if you could actually find out how many modular homes, period. I don't want to, 1994, seems kind of arbitrary. I know there are others in town. At this point...
Just as a point, though,
Yep.
Not knowing the digital record of these, I'm not sure the amount of time it would take to go through all of the paper files in the building department to answer an open-ended question like that. We could probably go back and provide a fairly accurate statement to a date certain.
Okay. At this point, I think that the recourse is via the planning board to talk about the issues there. If you'd like to set up a discussion with the town manager about the current zoning laws and enforcement of those that are within our purview, that's fine for clarity. As you know, there's always opportunities for a citizen's petition, and we always offer the opportunity to have that reviewed by town legal counsel, because those kind of petitions are in fact law. It's zoning by law and has to pass muster with the Attorney General. So we want to make sure if you were to craft something, it would be legally supportable by the town. One of which is a moratorium, and I'm not trying to squelch that. I'm just suggesting that the moratorium path may not be a path we can achieve because we can't compel state agencies to do something. But
Fully understood, and
Yep.
I appreciate that. And unfortunately, it's the disconnect and the fact that these things go on as long as they do, and it's extremely difficult for people in that situation who feel like it is the best move to make and to have something like this happen to them. And it's what we're interested in is going forward, making it so that more people don't have the same issue.
Yep.
Because nobody wants to spend as much money as it costs to produce a house here and then not be able to live in it. Personally, I feel the building department, the inspectional services did their job according to what was written in everything I can find, every code and everything that I can find. But there is the disconnect between the state and the town, and unfortunately, it's townspeople who have felt the error of this. And just assistance moving forward. You've got some great suggestions. I'm happy to follow up with the planning board. And hopefully this can come to a resolution and won't affect anybody else.
And I would recommend you also follow up with the Commonwealth's Division of Professional Licensure and State's Board of Building Regulations and Standards as well.
Yep.
We can't affect their change. We can't force their hand, as it were. And we're relying on the distinction we have by law of what we're allowed to do and what we don't have purview over.
Hopefully we can come to a resolution in some way.
Great.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other new business to be heard tonight? Not already on the agenda. Sir in the jacket, you raise your hand. You're on the agenda? Great. Okay. Very well. The board will meet candidates for appointment of the tenant member of the Danvers Housing Authority. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the last meeting, the board asked that both of the candidates for the open seat on the Housing Authority Board attend tonight's meeting to introduce themselves. You do have their applications with your materials. Virginia Sidmore and Edwin Richter were the two tenants who applied to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think with that, I would turn it back to you to invite the candidates up to introduce themselves and answer any questions you may have.
Certainly. The candidates both here. Why don't you start? The gentleman in the far back. Would you come to the podium, introduce yourself, and give us some background and your interest in serving? And the select board did receive the talent pool applications details previously. Welcome.
Good evening, members. I'm Edwin F. Richter, Jr. By definition of the law, I'm a new resident of Danvers in the past 2 years. However, by osmosis, I've had many years. My wife was an educator here, both at the elementary level and the high school level. And I have attended many meetings in various situations. Personally, I've been, as submitted to you, I was the chairman of the Industrial Development Commission in Beverly. Subsequent to that, I've been a DPW commissioner in Essex for many years. I have a resourceful aspect to what building codes are, services required, and especially for the handicap. About 10 years ago, we had to sell our home in Essex because my wife was handicapped, and we became tenants for the first time in our life. And believe me, I cannot get over the efficiency that this housing authority works with. The executive director, the maintenance staff are above and beyond reproach. And if you stop and think of the $1,000 that it costs to live in some of these other buildings, what's going on here, and how they work it, I have no clue, but they're doing a wonderful job. But as a member, I would think that oversight responsibilities, fiduciary and otherwise, according to what the state provides for funding, and ensuring fairness of the administration, and also the member must be aware and follow the federal, state, local laws and housing regulations to the letter. And to that extent, I would be a member of the board and not bring an agenda. I have no agenda. My agenda would be strictly to provide services, if there's a way of enhancement, and to become a member of the board.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Selectman Bennett?
None, thank you.
Maureen?
No, no questions.
Matt?
Yeah, just one question. Can you provide an example of a case where you may have helped a fellow tenant in the past couple of years?
Here personally, yes.
Yeah, just a brief example maybe of what you did.
I have furnished tools. I have aided others in various aspects. A couple would be personal, but I find the living condition. I'm at the Tapley,
Right.
and you couldn't find a better group of people. To be sure, there's differences. To be sure, some people do not follow the rules and regulations of society, and unfortunately, we're a microcosm of society.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Mills?
Thank you. Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You answered my questions. I appreciate your candor, and thank you. And is the other candidate here tonight?
I don't see the second candidate. Invitations were extended to both, and I believe both responded in the affirmative.
Okay. You both have everyone has the original talent pool, which was pretty detailed.
Yep.
At this time, I'll take a recommendation or a motion.
Question, if I may, for
Yes.
information. Were these talent pool forms filled out and submitted from the posting recently, or these older than that posting?
The posting recently. These were advertised at the sites.
Okay, so that's what generated
Correct.
the applications. Thank you.
Do I have any other discussion? Do I have a motion or a direction? No one cares to make a motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know why Ms. Sidmore is not here.
Would you like to, might I recommend maybe tabling it until later in the
Yeah, I'd
meeting?
just like to know, I mean, did something happen, she couldn't make it,
Well,
or she's not interested and is
Again,
withdrawing?
it's a 7 o'clock, it's a 6 o'clock meeting, which is a change from our previous past meetings.
She doesn't live far away. I'd like to table it so we can find out if she's not here because there was a problem or she's withdrawing.
All right, we'll take a moment, and I'll ask Kathy to call in a moment to find out if she's going to attend or not. We'll take a short break after a couple more agenda items.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, the board will hear a request to proclaim June 19th as Juneteenth in the town of Danvers. We received a proclamation in our packets. Mr. Mills or Mr. Bennett, would you like to read? Who would like to read the proclamation? I extended the invite to both. And
Right, is David interested in reading?
David, are you interested in reading the Juneteenth proclamation?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
Okay, well, he's looking for it.
I
Somebody
have
want
it,
to
yep.
speak to it?
There's someone, oh, certainly. We have speakers. Please, Mr. Pollack. I didn't realize we'd have speakers. Thank you.
Well, someone had to be here, and
Yes, please.
we are here. Deb Gesualdo is with me, too. She's a member of the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee.
Please.
I am the vice chair. My name is Paul Pollack. I'd like to thank the board members and the chairman for allowing us to speak on this issue. Dr. Joyko, who is our chairman, is unable to attend today because he's working. He's giving vaccinations. So he's very busy. He apologizes for not being here. If you have the proclamation, then you can read it. We have a proclamation. We have the proclamation also. We are supporting this proclamation. It was done by a subcommittee on our committee. Dr. Joyko and Deb were members of that subcommittee. They came up with it. We looked at it. We also have Mr. McKenna here from our committee. Mr. McKenna is I would think we'd call, I don't know if he wants to be called the founding father or the founding grandfather, but he was involved with the origination of this committee many years ago. I don't believe there are any other members here, so that covers everybody. But we feel that we're asking you to adopt this proclamation to recognize Juneteenth on June 19th as for the town of Danvers, to recognize what happened back in, I believe it was 1865, after the Civil War was over.
Yep.
Our committee debated this long and hard. If anybody's ever been to one of our committee meetings, you have to have a strong backbone and strong conscience and be patient. It takes a lot of time. We think this is extremely important, and we'd like you to adopt it if you see fit, and we're here to ask any questions that you might want to throw at us.
Thank you. Deb, do you have something you'd like to say?
Good evening. My name is Deb Gesualdo. I am also a member of the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. And as one of the authors of the Juneteenth proclamation that appears on the docket before you this evening, I believe that passing a proclamation recognizing Juneteenth as a day that our town will observe is just one of the many steps that you as a select board can take to help our town become a more welcoming, inclusive, equitable, and affirming place. Most American celebrations of freedom, such as Independence Day on July 4th, fall glaringly short of reflecting the history and lived experiences of Black Americans in the United States. With the passage of a Juneteenth proclamation, Danvers could join towns and cities across the United States in making Juneteenth a day to celebrate freedom, progress, and the resilience of Black Americans. Passing this proclamation and making sure our community knows that it is passed would be a bold step toward affirming that everyone in our community is valued and that the culture, background, and struggle of Black Americans is respected in our town. Thank you on behalf of the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee for your time and consideration of this proclamation. I think you have it before you. If you don't, we have a copy that we can read as well if you need us to.
You do, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the entire committee, those who showed and those who couldn't make it this evening. We thank you for your hard work. Mr. Mills, did you want to read that?
No.
Okay.
What I would ask if we do, Deborah, as part of the subcommittee of our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, was essentially the drafts person that put the draft forward and then had to justify everything to the rest of the committee. This began as her work product, and I think that she should read it.
Is the board amenable to that?
She can read it, but she'll still need 2 members of this committee to make a motion to accept
Certainly. Yep.
and second it.
Yep. Would you, feel free.
I would be happy to read it. Thank you. This is something I did work long and hard on during my my lunch breaks at work. We, the town of Danvers, are made up of people who come from all over the earth, and
I'm sorry, that's not the proclamation.
I'm sorry, did not scroll up far enough, sorry. Whereas the town of Danvers is a community that is working together to be a more equitable, inclusive, and just community. And whereas the town of Danvers is made up of people who come from all over the earth, and whereas in Danvers we believe that freedom and justice for all are essential cornerstones of a civil, healthy, and just society. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates and celebrates the end of slavery in the United States of America as the proclamation reached the last remaining enslaved African Americans in the Confederacy. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates June 19th, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger led Union soldiers into Galveston, Texas to announce that the Civil War had ended and that the Emancipation Proclamation had declared all enslaved people free nearly 2.5 years earlier. And whereas Major General Gordon Granger said, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates and celebrates African American freedom, education, and achievement. And whereas Juneteenth is a time for community reflection, self-reflection, and planning for a better future. And whereas Juneteenth is a day in many communities across the country marked with celebrations, guest speakers, picnics, and gatherings of friends and family. And whereas the town of Danvers acknowledges that the history of our town in the United States of America is plagued by racism and commits itself as a community to the principles of equity, inclusion, and the work of actively disrupting systemic and institutional racism to create the free and just society we all want to live in. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that the 19th of June will be a day to commemorate Juneteenth in the town of Danvers, and urge all members of the community to rededicate themselves to furthering the promise of equity, freedom, inclusion, and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Do I hear a motion adopting this proclamation?
Can I just ask a quick question?
You may.
I don't want to quibble. I'm sure a lot of thought went in this. Why the word earth and not world? Is there a reason, or is just that's where you ended up? Because when I was reading it myself, I was thinking world. Is there a significance?
I read so many Juneteenth proclamations, and that seemed to be the verbiage that was used, and I also just liked the way it read better.
Okay, well-
I went back and forth between both, and I had drafts with both, and
So
going back
you
and
understand
forth.
where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I liked how it read with earth, personally, just a stylistic
But
thing
if the
for
other
me.
proclamations use that word, then it's fitting to continue with that.
Yes.
So thank you very much for answering that. And I make a motion the town of Danvers declare this proclamation.
And second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Selectman Bennett?
No, I'm all set?
No. Selectman Bernard?
No, I think it's great, thank you.
Selectman Duggan?
Nope, I'm
Selectman
okay.
Mills?
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you to the committee.
And I'll also offer my thanks again to the committee, those who are here and those who couldn't make it, for the hard work, especially there's a long road to travel, there's a lot of work left to do. Last Wednesday was an incident I'm sure we'll talk about under the updates, but it only underscores the need for more enlightenment, more education, more understanding. So thank you very much. There's a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And we'll get a signed copy to you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, a public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the General Laws on the application of Merritt Boston North Operator, LLC, doing business as Doubletree Boston, North Shore, 50 Fir Cart Road, a.k.a. Village Drive. Andrew E. Dunn, manager, for a change of management of all alcoholic common vicular license at that location. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Andrew Dunn. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Welcome. Could you describe a little bit about what the application's for and the new management and any background for the board to consider?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Andrew Edward Dunn. I am the new general manager at the Doubletree in Danvers, Boston North Shore property. I'm here to have my name assigned to the liquor license, please. So I've been in the hospitality industry for over 25 years. This is my third time as a general manager of a hotel. I've been on property about 4 or 5 weeks, and just seeking the board's permission, of course, to put my name on the liquor license.
Can you provide any, the other entities that you were a manager for, was it including liquor license management?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The AC Hotel in Worcester was one of the properties, as well as the Crown Plaza in Newton, which has subsequently become a Four Points by Sheraton. It was a transition property, but those were the two previous hotels that I was the general manager for and had the liquor license in my name while at the property there.
Very good. I'll open it up to the board first and start with Selectman Bernard.
Looks like you have a lot of experience, Andrew. I think it's fine. I'm all set with it.
Thank you. Selectman Duggan.
I am also all set, no questions.
Selectman Mills.
No questions, thank you.
Selectman Bennett.
Thank you. So a big problem I have is I have a big memory, or good memory. And I've been sitting here for a number of years, and Doubletree and the previous flagship have been before us a number of times for a change of manager. Is there a particular reason for that?
I can't speak to the previous years or specifically. I will say that I think for everybody, as we all know sitting in this room, I think that in very recent history, I'm sure that the COVID-19 has played an impact on the management and potentially turnover. It's been pretty devastating to the hospitality industry, as everybody knows. I know that all of my colleagues in the hotel industry, many of which were, of course, laid off, many of which that were not laid off were one of a handful of managers to run a hotel. Many are in the process of changing to another property because it's been a tough road for sure. And again, that's really the last year and a half to 2 years. Beyond that, I wouldn't be in a position to answer that.
Right, I'm just making the comment that it's been a lot of turnover up at that site, but we're glad that you're open. We're glad that you're continuing to stay open. I read in Boston there's some long-term hotels that haven't opened yet. It is tough on the hospitality industry. We're grateful for you being in Danvers, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
And I hope I don't see somebody from that hotel asking for a change of manager for a while yet.
Me too.
So all set down?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So the things I look for are on the change of manager sheet. I see you'll be there 40 hours a week, minimally. I'm sure more. When you're not there, you've listed 2 people as alternates. Are they both tip certified?
To my knowledge, they are. I can provide that documentation, after the meeting. I know Zane is one of them, Zane Jackson, and James Kirsinger is the other person I put on the list there.
And my presumption is that any time the liquor service is happening, there'll be at least one person who is of the 3 of you on site to manage that.
Yeah, so my name, of course, is the general manager is one, Zane is our front office manager, and James is our executive chef, who currently is our senior food and beverage manager in the hotel.
Okay. And according to the clerk, I think all the paperwork's in order except the tip certification?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so if you get us your tip certification on those other the other 2 people's, it would be helpful. Those are my questions. This is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to this application? Seeing none?
Motion to close?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the transfer of this change of manager, subject to proof of all tip certification be provided to the town clerk.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Just to revert to a previous piece of business, the second applicant is now joining us. We'll give her a second to settle, and then we'll come back to it after the next item. The next item, the board will review a plaque design for the Soucy Family Memorial Bridge. Though you are a man who needs no introduction, we are on TV if you could, please.
Good evening. I'm Dick Moody, the president of the Danvers Veterans Council. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you, Gardner, for being in your new position.
Thank you.
Hope that will buy me something tonight.
If you give me $1, I can get a McDonald's coffee.
No, seriously, though, it is really very moving at the Veterans Council and hopefully at the Select Board that we were jointly able to understand that there was a family in the town of Danvers who sent 6 of the sons over to World War II and Korea, to Europe, to Africa, and we wanted to be able to do something to recognize and memorialize that family. The last time we came before the board, I think everyone thought that this was a good cause and it was something that we would like to be able to pursue. There were some things that needed to be done after the last board meeting as far as the wording on the plaque, the position of the monument, things such as that. And we hope to be able to clarify some of that this evening. We have given to you a couple of handouts, and I would like to hold any words regarding the family to Janine Nash, who will be following me in just a minute. I would like to address your attention to the two photographs that were on the handout that we gave tonight. The first photograph is a picture of the Liberty Street Bridge taken from the Pope's Landing parking area. And you can see what the bridge looks like, what our proposed locations or the sign that indicates that the bridge is going to be named in honor of the Soucy family. The positions would be at either end of the bridge. One would be just about straight ahead down that sidewalk at the beginning of the bridge. The other sign, similar to the Danbusport bridge, the way that they've laid it out, would be all the way to the right, facing the traffic coming that way. And that would basically say, this is the Soucy Family Memorial Bridge. That's what would be on the sign, facing the oncoming traffic. In addition to that, if you turn to the second photo that we gave you, we are hoping to be able to put at that grassy area, just at the foot of the bridge, pretty close to where those pylons are, a plaque that explains a little bit about who the Soucys were. One of the things that I've been having a problem with in town is that we go around and we see a commemorative sign on a street corner or a park, and it has a name, but we really don't know why that name is on the sign. And so we try to take some action to be able to tell a little bit about those people. Served in World War I, United States Army, killed in action, things like that, so that people have an idea of who their heroes from the hometown are. In this particular case, because they had so many brothers that fought, we would like to put a plaque that explains a little bit about that, and that would be right on that patch of grass as you get into the bridge. We certainly couldn't say that much if it was on the bridge, so this gives the person an opportunity to stop while they're having a picnic lunch, putting their boat in the water, whatever it would be, and be able to learn a little bit more about the Soucy family. That's pretty much my pitch for tonight. I would like to turn it over to Janine to tell you a little bit more about how we want to proceed, what's on the plaque, and basically how we're going to pay for it. Janine?
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you, the Select Board and the Town Manager for having me back, and to Dick for all his hard work on this endeavor. My name is Janine Nash, and I'm a Danvers resident and the daughter of Roland Soucy, one of the 6 Soucy brothers who served together in World War II, and for who the Liberty Street Bridge will be named. As Dick stated previously, we are looking to put the standard signposts on either end of the bridge and propose a historical plaque explaining why the bridge is duly named at the corner of Pope's Landing, closest to the start of the bridge and several feet in front of where the decorative wood pier posts are located. The proposed plaque would be a heavy-duty bronze marker installed on a bronze post with a 40-degree angle, similar to this podium, for ease of reading. I believe you were provided with a mock-up of what the plaque might look like and the proposed wording. I wanted to have it to you sooner, but I have to admit that writing something so permanent was quite intimidating. In that vein, I had a friend who works in editing, Kate Hanesian of Blue Pencil Consulting, take a look at my wording and correct any misspellings and grammar. My vision for the plaque was to have the photo of the 6 brothers done in a bronze relief with a caption noting each of the brothers' names, branch of service, rank as depicted in the photo, and also their rank at the end of their service. To the right of the photo would be the written historical significance of why the bridge is so named. The borders around the text are just there because it was the only way I could format the mock-up, but they don't need to be in the finished product. I have contacted Kimball Monuments here in Danvers to get a ballpark estimate of what the plaque would cost, and they have stated somewhere around $3,000 plus shipping for a plaque as described, approximately 26 inches by 18 inches with a post mount. This is about what I expected, and my thought has always been to start some sort of fundraising campaign, such as a GoFundMe, to raise the money necessary to pay for the memorial. I think between my extended family, friends, and the community, reaching this amount is definitely reasonable. If by chance we do not raise that amount of the funds this way, I have found 2 grant possibilities offered through the State Historical Records Advisory Board and the Military Historical Society of Massachusetts. One of these grants could definitely make up the difference. If we were to have an excess of funds, I would like to donate the excess to the Veterans Council and/or Operation Troop Support as a thank you for all their hard work. This distribution of excess funds would be so noted on the GoFundMe page so that donors would know that any excess funds would go on to serve our veterans. I appreciate your consideration for the approval of the proposed plaque, signage, and to complete this project. And once again, thank you for granting my family this great honor. If you have any questions, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. I'll start with Selectman Duggan.
No, I'm all set. I listened to your presentation at the last meeting, so I'm in support of this, and I think it's a great idea to name the bridge after your family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Selectman Mills?
Thank you. I, too, heard your presentation before. I think that I said or should have said, it's beautifully written, it's beautifully presented, it's a wonderful idea, and thank you for your effort.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Selectman Bennett?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the work that you put into this. I know how it is important to you and your family members, and I thank Dick and his group for supporting you, and I look forward to this going up on the bridge. I think it will be a good addition to the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Selectman Bernard?
I think it's wonderful. It's terrific. Your presentation was fantastic, and I like having the plaque too, for the history of it too.
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I too am excited about the opportunity to honor the family. With that, this is Mr. Town Manager.
I don't believe a vote is required. The board previously approved this and just asked to be able to see the finished product. And once the plaque is ready, the town will work with Dick and Janine on the installation as it is on town property.
Wonderful.
So we've already accepted the request.
And so good luck in your fundraising efforts and your grant writing efforts. That's another whole world. But good luck in that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. This time we'll move back to agenda item 3. We've already heard from one applicant for the tenant member of the Danvers Housing Authority. I believe the second applicant has joined us. Is that the case? Is that her in the back?
Yes, that's Virginia.
Ms. Sidmore.
Ms. Sidmore? If you would go to the podium and just tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself and your interest in this role. We'd like to hear from you. I'm sorry. Welcome. Welcome to the meeting. If you could introduce yourself and tell us about your application and your interest in serving as a tenant member on the Danvers Housing Authority.
Okay. I am almost a lifelong member of Danvers community. I've been on the diversity committee when it was originally formed, or not originally, but anyways. Tell a little bit about myself. I live at Perry Terrace, and I do believe that it's important that we all give back to our communities, and the fact that I am able to stay at Perry Terrace is a wonderful honor, actually, that I can stay in my community. I grew up down the port, so I'm back there, and that's that's a nice thing. It's a wonderful community to be part of. I would like to be able to be on the board. To express my gratitude in some way, and I'm drawing a blank right
That's all right. It's daunting to come before
Yeah.
us, I understand.
I feel that my background, I was Director of Family Services at Citizens for Adequate Housing, and I worked for them for almost 20 years. And I started out as an overnight counselor and worked my way up. I've learned a lot of people skills, how to appreciate the people that we served, and the housing, the shelter that I worked in specifically was for families recovering from substance abuse. In it, I grew just working with the population and helping them to become their better selves. And I do believe that the Danvers housing is an opportunity for people to appreciate where they are and what we have. It's important for me at this age of 76 to do something useful with my life. And I think this would be a good fit for me in giving back my opinion, research, just being there, I think is very important.
Great, thank you. I'll open up to the board. Selectman Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight, both candidates. This is going to be a difficult choice. You're both well qualified. You both have history and activism supporting your particular communities. So thank you both for coming, and I'll wait and hear what my fellow board members have to say before we make a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Bernard.
Thank you both. I'm on the Danvers Housing Board, and we'll make our decision tonight. And thank you for, saying what you had to say, and appreciate, you volunteering. It's greatly appreciated, but thank you. I'll wait too.
Select Board Member Duggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Sidmore, a question that I had for the other applicant as well is just perhaps an example of something you did to help out a tenant at Perry Terrace, maybe someone that lives close by, a neighbor that you helped out at some point, maybe with some type of problem?
Well, particularly, I can remember somebody that was very negative about a lot of things. And I think she came from, she had a lot of assets at one time. So it's been difficult for her. So for every time that she has said something negative, and specifically, she was complaining one day about how the tubs were cut out for handicap accessible, and she hated it. And I said, so for every negative, I try and put in a positive. And I said, I, for one, am thrilled, because then I don't have to worry about slipping and falling, trying to get over the side of a tub. So that's where I come from, is when you are with negative people, the best thing to do is to try and find a positive to share.
That's great. Thank you.
Select Board Member Mills.
Well, I don't have really any questions except to say I'm really impressed with the quality of people that we have. The first candidate spoke to some executive experience that is very impressive and was candid to say that he's kind of new to the town of Danvers. Ms. Sidmore is a lifelong, and to me, I'm kind of swayed in favor of someone who is sensitive to the human issues and dealing with the personalities that would be involved in our kinds of senior housing. And so I will tend to support Ms. Sidmore without any suggestion that the other candidate is not qualified and that we are very fortunate to maybe have him in the wings in the future.
Thank you. I, too, am balancing the executive experience that you represent and discussed and the social experience that Ms. Sidmore reflects in her work with Citizens for Adequate Housing. Both are skills that are needed on that board, and so it's a delicate balance.
I also worked closely with the executive director of Citizens for Adequate Housing as far as budgeting, hiring, all things executive.
It's a tough decision that we have to make because we've got two very qualified candidates, and we don't want to think that we're selecting one over the other in as much as one goes away not having achieved an opportunity for volunteerism. We do have other volunteer opportunities in town, so at this time, I'll open it up to the board for a motion. Is there anybody who wants to make a motion on this?
I move that Ms. Sidmore be granted this opportunity to be the member of the Housing Authority.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this motion? If not, I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Sir, I thank you very much for your opportunity.
My pleasure for the opportunity.
Okay, and we hope you stay engaged and look for other opportunities to help the town. Thank you. Thank you very much. We now return to agenda item number 7. The board will hear a report by finance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask the board's indulgence, perhaps? Could we take number 8 out of order, with your permission?
Sure, sure. Is there a, sure, I have no preference.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
the board amenable to that? Moving agenda 8 up? Thank you. The board will vote to approve the preservation restriction agreement between Danvers Historical Society and the town of Danvers, acting and through the Preservation Commission. Mr. Town Manager, do you want to introduce this?
Very briefly, yes, you received in your packets a memorandum from Aaron Henry, as well as a copy of the agreement that has been, I will say, hammered out over many, many months. Mr. Henry made an attempt to summarize for the board the various aspects of this agreement. There is an open, lively question as to whether this board needs to vote, but the state regulations and direction is sufficiently ambiguous that a vote of the board will cement this status for the town to assist as a third party in the transfer of the Putnam House back to the family that owned it for many years. So I don't know if, Aaron, you want to add anything to what I just said, or if the board has questions. Certainly there are plenty of experts in the room tonight who can answer questions about this topic. But by and large, this is an agreement between the town acting through the Preservation Commission to help support and enforce a preservation restriction on the structures, the Israel Putnam House. So, and the Preservation Commission has approved this. It's been vetted by the town attorney, an attorney representing the Historical Society, and it's been reviewed by the state.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak to this issue? If not, I'll open it up to the board. I'll start with you, Selectman Bennett.
Thank you. As a member of the Danvers Historical Society and as chairman of the Preservation Commission, who will be signing this document, I will not dwell into comments and will abstain when it comes time to vote.
Thank you. Selectman Bernard.
I know the Emerson family for a long time. Actually went to school with some of them. I think this is great. Good work.
Thank you. Selectman Duggan?
Yes, I have a few questions. First, a point of information through you, Mr. Chairman. So back in January of last year, I was under the impression that the Historical Society sold this property back to the family. Is this something that needs to be resolved before that transfer can happen?
That the resolution, the vote of the Historical Society was to allow for the transfer back to the family. The presumption is that all of that legal paperwork is completed.
I see, okay.
It was under the auspices of the Historical Society. It is now back to the family. And you have a comment, sir?
I could answer these questions.
If you want to go to the microphone so people can hear you at home, that'd be great.
My name's Tom Guidi. I'm a former longtime resident of Danvers and actually former member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. But we sold our house and moved to Topsfield 2 years ago. But I've stayed active representing the Historical Society. There was a vote to sell the property to a charitable trust set up by ancestors of the Emerson family, the Putnam/Emerson family. But one of the conditions of the deal was that the Historical Society would place permanent preservation restrictions on the property. And it had to go through the state Massachusetts Historical Commission because under Massachusetts law, the only way you can make restrictions permanent is if they go through the state process. So there was a negotiation of the restrictions between the buyers and the Historical Society. We reached agreement. We had to run them by Mass Historical Commission. They tweaked things a little bit, asked for some changes, and by the way, they have to sign it too, but they insist on being the last ones to sign. They want to make sure we've worked out everything beforehand. So that's the procedural part of it.
Okay. And why I have you at the podium, I have some other questions about the actual restrictions. So I was out at the property last week, and the place needs a lot of work. And so I have this document here, and I'm going to look on page, let's see, on page 4. I just wanted to get some clarification on some of these items. So on page 4, on item 1A and 1B, it talks about the building being maintained forever substantially in their current condition or in their restored condition. So we don't want to maintain in the current condition because it's, there's a lot of water damage with foundation and with siding. So is there a plan to actually perform this restoration work, and who will be paying for it?
Okay.
You have any idea? That's a lot to ask.
No, absolutely. No, this has all been discussed. I'll take part of it and then ask Eric Emerson to fill you in on what the buyers are planning.
Okay.
And that was all part of the discussion. The reason that Danvers Historical Society is selling this back to the Emerson family because the Historical Society just doesn't have the funds to maintain the property. As you can see, the property has deteriorated. It would love to be able to fix it, but it also owns other properties, such as the Glen Magna estate, that needs hundreds of thousands of dollars of work. So the Historical Society, somewhat reluctantly, had to focus on one property and give basically pass along this property. Fortunately, there's the family trust with substantial assets, and family members willing to also contribute, as we understand it, to get the property back in shape. I mean, the condition is a little bit tricky, but the point of it is you can't modernize most of the building. I mean, there's some exceptions here. And by the way, Richard Trask drafted the restriction language that the parties ultimately agreed to with a couple little tweaks. But just so you'll know, he was heavily involved in it. But the family has plans to absolutely restore the property. I think that's the key thing. It's restore and make some adaptive use. It's not going to just sit there empty. These kinds of properties aren't successful just to be treated as museums. There's just not enough public interest, even though this is an incredibly historically significant property. But Eric, do you want to say something about what the family is planning?
I'm Eric Emerson. I know most of you folks, so I'm a lifelong, almost resident of Danvers. I'm a Putnam, and I was involved in the process with the Historic Society to come up with a pathway to save the house. So really a lot of the credit goes to my great uncles and aunt, who had a special affection really passed down from their mother. And so they contributed significantly out of their estates, something on the order of $1 million. Plus, they had, my uncle, great uncle, had specifically funded some needed repairs prior to that. So obviously the family has a significant commitment to it. So we have about $1 million in the endowment. We have just about $400,000 in firm commitments to fund for the preservation. And then my father, who was very close to his aunt and uncle, is in the process of contributing a substantial portion of the income from the private part of the island to the house. So we think in total, plus some fundraising that we'll do within the family and then beyond, that we'll have sufficient funds to execute the plan, which we're working on. We'll come to the town with it. We want to really approach it. It's really an island in the middle of highways, so we want to approach it in total. And all of it is really geared ultimately to the historic preservation. So the commitments that have been made within the family have been significant. So I think it won't take too long for it to really become something that the town can start to be proud of. It's really not acting as an asset to the town at the moment. It's really a detraction. I operate the business next to it, so I have to look at it every day. I lived in that house for 25 years of my life, so it's pretty sad to look over and see the state of it, but also knowing that we will bring it back. So I think it's going to probably end up being a 3 to 5 year plan, but some of the things you'll see right away as far as making it attractive, open to the community. So I think the town can be comfortable that the plans, once we finalize them, will be executed and we'll have the financial wherewithal to do it. So I guess that's the best I can say at this point, since we don't have anything definitive. But really, everything is about the historic purpose. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have with regard to that.
Yes, I just have one follow-up question. So there was a mention of not making it a museum. So is there thought of having perhaps a family living in there to protect it? Because when it's vacant, it's...
Well, that's a concern. So that, the thing with adaptive reuse is you can't do everything, so you have to pick the ones that are the best balance between the historic aspect of it and the income that supports the historic aspect of it. And I can't stand here telling you that we have the answer for it, but I will say that with the income from the adaptive reuse coupled with the income from the commercial property, will be sufficient to really, you can't absolutely guarantee the preservation of anything, right? Because you don't know, big hurricane could knock it over.
Sure.
But there will be, the financial plan will support the historical preservation and adaptive reuse plan. I can absolutely guarantee you that.
Okay, well, that sounds great. It's a big improvement on the track that it's been on for the last couple of years, so thank you for that information. I'm all set.
Thank you. Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm definitely in favor of this proposal, and especially knowing that Richard Trask and the Emerson family have been so persistent in their efforts to make it happen. I knew Eric when he was an infant because his mother and father were great friends of mine, and I visited in their home where they lived. I was 60, almost 60 years ago. So that the family can once again be coupled with that property itself is a great thing. Plus, it's a historic thing for Danvers. And once again, I just want to say the way Aaron Henry puts together a package, how could anybody possibly say no? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask, are there other members besides Dan and myself who are members of the Historical Society? All right, thank you. For a point of clarification, Select Board Member Mills, Richard Trask helped draft the language, or most of which you see, and some has been modified. He was not supportive of the transfer.
Oh, okay.
Just to let you know, but that was apparent at the Historical Society meeting, and I have strong feelings, and I too will abstain as a member of the Historical Society and at the method of transfer. So I voted against it, and I feel I should abstain from this vote here. So I'll accept a motion from the members who did not abstain. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And 2 abstains. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item 7, we'll turn to agenda item 7. The board will hear a report by Finance Director Rodney Conley on the fiscal 2021 third quarter report.
Good evening through you, Mr. Chairman. What you have in front of you is the quarter 3 report for FY21. You'll see it's a little bit later than quarter 3. It's 83% through the fiscal year. That reflects the numbers being updated as of April 30th. On the revenue side, the biggest number worth pointing out continues to be the hotel motel tax. As you can see, we're only 53% collected, and based on that number as well as our own internal analysis, it appears we won't hit that $915,000 mark. So as we've talked about in the past 2 years, we reduced our revenue assessments significantly on motor vehicle, hotel, and meals. It appears at this point that motor vehicle and meals, we will have reduced it sufficiently and will surpass those estimates. Hotel motel looks like we will come up short, and that's reflected here, as well as the fact that we've reduced our estimate as part of the FY22 budget process. Elsewhere on the revenue side, you'll see we have already surpassed our in lieu of taxes, and that's due to the fact that we've received a settlement payment from the Salem Beverly Water Board for several years of pilot payments due. Also, we are over the estimate in licenses and permits, driven largely, as that revenue category normally is, by building permits, which at the point of April 30th was already at $760,000 in revenue. A couple minor shortfalls, one in fines and forfeits, which is largely driven by court fines. That's down this year, and investment income is down this year as well. That is it for notable pieces of the revenue side.
Can you just speak to actually the 2 I circled besides forfeitures, fines and forfeitures? Why would investment income and Medicaid reimbursement particularly be down?
So Medicaid reimbursement is it's a timing issue. So we receive a large payment towards the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So we're relatively confident that we'll hit that $200,000 number. It's just that there's a large bulk payment this month that we'll receive.
Great.
As far as the investment income, most of our funds are invested in MMDT accounts. I don't have it with me, but I asked our treasurer, Jill Summit, to pull some of that information, and you can see that the rate of return has dropped significantly over the past 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the revenues portion of the report, please?
Thank you.
First
Yes,
board member Bennett.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the appropriate party. Cannabis impact fees. There's a surplus based on existing host agreement. Can we get explanation on that? And does the host agreement provide for the cannabis companies to make donations to nonprofits in the town? And if so, have they done so?
So I can answer a couple questions. The cannabis impact fees were not something that we budgeted as a incoming revenue for the first year or so because it was new. Generally, when we have a novel revenue stream, it will flow to free cash the first year. Once it becomes more stable, we'll show it as a recurring revenue. So we partially budgeted. This is going back now a year plus when we were working on this budget. We've exceeded based on the agreement that was in place. I will note that within the last month or so, working with our operator, we've renegotiated the agreement. We had language in that agreement that they would make certain payments not to exceed 3% of gross revenue, which is the amount that is widely recognized by the Cannabis Control Commission. Their sales did not meet expectations in the first year of operation, so we renegotiated the agreement with them as the language in the agreement provided for. So the revised agreement will be a lower number next year. And to answer the second question, there is language in that agreement for discretionary donations to be made to charitable nonprofits. And I can certainly report back to this board on what, if any, donations have been made to date.
And is there criteria that they can
They have the
contribute to?
discretion. We
They have
don't
the
direct. Yeah,
discretion.
we don't direct that.
So a nonprofit could approach them?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions on the revenue aspect of the report tonight?
May I ask,
Mr.
Mr.
Mills.
Chairman? Thank you. On investment income, I don't know what money that is and where it's invested. But I got a state employee retirement newsletter today because I'm retired from the state. And they had a phenomenal year with about 18% growth in investment. And then, of course, there's always rumors about what Harvard University is doing with their billions, and they usually come up with 12 to 14%. So I'm saying we're not doing so well. And I don't know what money this is. What constitutes the investment here in investment income?
That's an astute analysis. So for the pension and OPEB investment, those are invested in stocks and bonds, et cetera, mutual funds. For this investment income, this is just the cash the town has on hand. So it's usually it has to be in a liquid fashion. So it's usually we use the Mass Municipal Depository, which earns a very nominal amount each month. And the reason behind that is we have to pull it out at times to pay bills.
Like my checking account?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, so that's the difference between that fund with the pension, which we've seen tremendous results the past year.
Thank you.
Would you like to talk about expenditures at all?
Sure. So for the most part, expenditures have been as expected. A couple worth pointing out, snow and ice is at 77%, and that should be the final number pending any last-minute invoices we would have received recently from any of the contractors, but that should be the final number. We've also seen potential vacancy surplus in land use and community services through some outage there. Most of the other items are as expected. Fire overtime has surpassed that budget. We believe there may be some surplus in permanent salaries, but with some recent retirements and some other costs, there's a chance that we'll be having a finance committee meeting to do a small year-end transfer to shore up the fire department account. I'd also note that these reflect some costs that are reimbursable through FEMA or through the CARES Act that have been transferred out, but there are costs currently in here that we do think will still also be transferred out before year end. So some of these costs that you see, hopefully, will be charged off to other funding sources.
Thank you. Any questions on the expenditures portion of this? You do note that the fire overtime is at 98% of the budget at this time. What is your projection through the end of the year?
I believe right now it's close to 40,000 over budget, that line item. I don't have the latest numbers, but again, it would be close to being absorbed within some outages in the permanent category. But like I said, it might be close enough that we will need a transfer by FinCom.
Okay. I was less concerned about the actual transfer, the necessity for transfer, as the several years ago, we worked diligently on the fact that the police had a lot of overtime. At that time, there was a lot of injuries and a lot of transition. Is this, if I could ask the town manager, what the trend for fire department overtime is? Obviously, people get hurt and we're sorry for it, and this is not a condemnation of that. Is there a method in which we can plan? We had discussed in previous budget hearings about hiring another person per shift or on a shift so that they could absorb some of that. Because if the overtime, here's $40,000, could we receive the benefit of having another employee, another person on a piece of equipment, and subsequently reduce not one-to-one, but the overtime budgets?
So there are two questions to answer there. The FY22 budget did increase the fire overtime based on, we trended out. We keep track of a 3 to 5 year trend. I believe 2017, they had the perfect storm with injuries, a lot of really freak accidents. They were several $100,000 over budget that year. But the increase in the budget for 22 mirrors the 3 year trend we've seen. So the hope is that the transfer this year kind of smooths that out. And I think I stated during the budget process, we would add public safety employees for need, not necessarily to reduce OT, because adding bodies won't bring, each new employee will create his or her own overtime to a certain extent. Not one for one, as you said, but we would be adding bodies based on need, not based on a desire to bring overtime down.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else with questions on the expenditures or any part of this this offering?
As usual, Rodney does a great job.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much, Rodney. I appreciate the report. All right. So now the board will vote to accept community fundraising gifts in support of the pop-up park in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A.
I'm going to track down Aaron Henry, who he gave me the one moment sign as he left the room.
All right.
He was chasing Attorney Guidi out the door.
Then do you want to switch over to the town manager? We'll start reporting on various
Tell Patty I
items
said
of
hi.
interest.
Sure. Yeah, we can start there. That'd be great. The main item I would draw your attention to is actually the application that I handed out just prior to the meeting. Prior to becoming chairman, Select Board Member Trask had completed a naming rights form having to do with Richard Trask and the Archival Center at the library. And consistent with the recently adopted Select Board naming rights policy, that application is provided to this board for a brief discussion, and then the board decides how it wishes to proceed. Some of the options that are described in the naming rights policy would be moving directly to schedule a public hearing before this body, referring the request to another body, for example, the library trustees, as this is a library space. You'll recall a year or so ago when Ms. Daly approached the town prior to the adoption of the policy regarding a naming opportunity at the senior center, the thought was to refer it to the Council on Aging. So with the recently adopted policy, this board has discretion to determine how it wishes to proceed, and consistent with the policy that I think makes sense, as these applications come in, they're provided under the manager update. I can speak very briefly to them, and then the board can have an informal discussion about how it wishes to proceed with the request.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, I certainly think that this request is reasonable, and we should schedule a future select board meeting properly advertised to discuss.
Is there other comments on the application?
Yes, I have a comment. I think it's a wonderful suggestion, and I would support it. And I do think that whatever Dan has just recommended is a good idea.
I agree too, Gardner. I think it's a great idea, and I think we should go with what Dan says too.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Matt, comments?
Yeah, I also agree that it should be on a future agenda.
All right. If I might, 2 points. Richard is often reluctant to accept accolades. I have spoken to him. He understands that this application went forward and was supportive. And I, for continuity, would suggest that we ask, if it's the will of the board, ask the library trustees for a recommendation as well. It is their building, and I think it's appropriate that they should weigh in as an elected body.
Thank you, Gardner. Just listening to what the manager said, do we want to discuss it first or have the library board send their thoughts to us before we discuss it?
I would think we'd want to know what their feeling is, and if, to weigh in on that. I think we're the decision makers seeking input from them, as opposed to making a recommendation that maybe appear to be
Yeah, no, I understand. I just wanted, so instead of scheduling a meeting, we should reach out to the library board of trustees for their thoughts and recommendation.
and then have
before
a
we-
scheduled meeting
and
after that.
Correct.
Yep. If that's the will of the board, we'll ask the town manager to contact the library trustees, seek their recommendation, and after which we'll have a scheduled meeting of the select board to further discuss. Thank you. I see that Mr. Henry is back. Mr. Henry, would you like to discuss the fundraising for the pop-up park so that we can accept the community fundraising gifts?
Good evening. Thank you. I was going to walk away. As part of rolling out the grant, part of rolling out the pop-up park, we, as you know, had a community fundraising element of this in order to raise funds from the community for a matching grant we received from Mass Development. And it was actually wildly successful. As of today, we have received 99 individual donations totaling $8,789. Might be more. If there's more, we'll come back to you.
I'm sorry, what was that number again?
$8,789.
Great.
From 99 individuals as it stands today. There might be a few others, but we'll come back to the June 24th meeting if we do receive additional grants. But things have gone very well. The rollout itself, since I have the mic, I will just say, like much in COVID, we're a little frustrated right now in that some of the things that we are trying to order aren't coming in a timely fashion. And we're working with the town manager's office and putting some additional signage up at the parklet to make sure people know that there are additional elements that are still coming in. And we're working closely with the Recreation Department on, now that the COVID restrictions are lifted, adding more interactive elements to the park, such as games and staging, and we're going to be doing some programming there as well, with some music and some kind of things along that nature. So we're getting very excited. We wish we could have snapped our fingers and had all that stuff happening with the initial rollout, but that's with COVID. We have to be flexible, and we're doing our best to get out there, get the materials out there as quickly as they come in.
Great. I received a call over the weekend. Is the GoFundMe page down or still open for accepting gifts?
I cannot tell you tonight. I think it's closed, but
Well, I guess the question is, if someone wishes to still donate, what is the best method to do so?
if they could reach out to our office, specifically Georgia Pendergast, we'll make sure that we
Great.
get the money.
Great, thank you. Board, do you have any questions? I'll open it up to Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you again. Aaron, I suppose everybody has received, well, in my age group, I've had 3 specific complaints of people who wanted to use the bank and could not because of their because they're handicapped people. And also, one person today in my swimming pool group, we're all between 70 and 90, you know, and she complained that she's lost her parking space in order to go into CVS. And I told her to go around the back where I go. But let's just say that the loss of parking spaces is a concern to many citizens.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably the biggest negative we've received so far is the loss of those convenience. The board asked us to look at replacing the handicap parking space in a lot nearby. Fortunately, our analysis of that proved that all the off-street parking lots nearby have van accessible parking spaces already in them, so we weren't going to add a new one, but we are working with DPW to create basically that first parking space on Maple Street. So if you know where the current handicap space is, it's kind of facing out towards Zolo's. Imagine taking that space and just moving it out to the street such that we'll have a handicap accessible spot right there on the corner. So it's not the best for those who are, you know, wanted to park right in that handicap spot, but we are literally 15 feet from that spot. We're going to be creating a handicap space.
Could I suggest that, because I was the one who's really adamant about replacing that spot.
Yep.
Could I suggest that that's a very trafficked area? That's actually probably, right beside CVS and coming, you know, past the middle school and right there, that first spot is really heavily trafficked.
Yep.
I would recommend that actually you replace the spot at the other end, right next to the first spot, public spot next to the bank. So if you...
I'm going to say school, but it's not school, it's
not
Central.
Central.
Right.
Less traffic.
Yep.
Easier for someone who needs, with a handicap issue to get out, get their wheelchair, get whatever it is. I appreciate that we have van accessible.
Yeah.
So if we're just going for a single spot that's not van accessible, I would recommend, granted it's whatever, 11 spaces away from where it was,
Yeah.
but it's less trafficked and
Sure.
I just asked for that consideration.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I think, again, we kind of looked at that row, and we didn't want to put it at the other end of that row, because then you're backing into it, most likely, so we
Right.
thought that one was easier, because you could kind of head in, park there. But that Central Street would work just as well.
I agree with Gardner, too. I think that would be better
Yeah.
over there, too.
Yep.
Is there one on that on Cottage already? Or can we put a couple there, maybe?
Cottage is coming out.
I mean, not Cottage, Central.
Central.
No, there's some in
none.
the municipal lot just past
Right.
Eastern Mortgage to the left there. There's a couple right at that end of that.
Okay.
There's one on the other corner of there's an on-street handicap parking space around the corner from Zolo's.
Could we put
There's
maybe a
one
couple
over
there?
by Rocco's in front of Glitterati.
Yeah, because I'm looking at, if you have a couple on Central, and then people that aren't handicapped can park where the Brothers parking lot is, and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
that would-
the one around the corner actually has enough lead space.
Yeah.
It's striped ahead, so
Yeah,
they're
it's a
not
big-
the first spot immediately
Yeah.
on the corner. So,
I agree.
Yep.
I think Central, definitely.
other comments on the pop-up park? Yes, please.
So I also agree with having a spot right there on Central, right on the side of the bank, and that will be for a customer that wanted to go into the bank. There's a spot in the back of CVS at the rear door, right across from the rear door. So if someone wanted to be close to CVS,
They can use
I don't
that.
think it's open late at night, but during the day, that's a short walk. So that would, the only issue with that is kind of I think there is a ramp there.
I don't think there is, Matt.
In the
There-
back?
There's two or three, there might be three spaces at the bottom of the ramp, so
Yeah.
it's not difficult to get from those into CVS.
Yeah,
but-
so I think we should try to get that done right away, because that's been a concern for a number of
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And then the other thing was just to ask the public just to be patient, because as you mentioned, there's a difficulty with getting materials. I think people expected kind of an instantaneous pop-up park, like it was just going to
Well,
pop up, so.
That was
it's
our hope, but.
Yeah,
then
it's a
the
work in
vendors brought
progress,
the
so I would just
reality.
ask the public to just kind of bear with us while we get this straightened out.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have, thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for the update, and if I will tell the person who left a message on my phone where they can contact for further donations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you. And back to you, Mr. Town Manager, for various items of interest.
Did we vote on that?
I'm sorry, you're right, it's a vote to accept a gift. And I'll accept a motion.
Motion to accept the fundraising gifts in support of the pop-up park.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. I think we'll forego the 99 letters.
Oh, I was looking forward to a letter.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Now, back to various items of interest, Mr. Town Manager.
Just the first one's very brief. You should have received a copy tonight of the revised committee assignments for fiscal year '22 that were adopted at the last meeting.
Yes.
One other quick update. Staffing, our new building inspector, Jim Butler, started today. I popped in first thing this morning to make sure that he actually came, and he did. And Pete Windell was hard at work showing him the ropes. Looked overjoyed to have some backup. So we're working in earnest to get the assistant position filled as well, so that we'll be back up to full staff. We, any minute now, should have our official results from the civil service for the captain and chief position. So I certainly will probably be providing you an update prior to our June 29th meeting in terms of promotional offers being made for those positions. But it's been a long process, and I know the candidates themselves are eager to see it come to a conclusion. And just briefly, I wanted to speak to the incident that the chairman referenced last week. Acting Chief Tansey contacted me late at night last week to inform me of what appeared to be an incident at the UU Church. The investigation regarding that incident is still ongoing. The department has had many conversations with neighbors and has made many attempts to find footage and get a sense of what occurred there. They've been unsuccessful to date in getting hard information, but they continue in their pursuit of that information because they want to know as much as they can about what occurred and go forward. But I want to thank the chair. I know we sent an update out to the board as this was unfolding last week, but also Dee Joko, the chair of the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, and acting Chief Phil Tansey, who came together to work on a statement to state very plainly that if that incident was in fact what it appeared to be, that there was no room in this community for those types of actions. So more to follow, but it was a stressful day, and I appreciate the support of the chair and the board as we try to get our arms around what happened and how we proceed.
Does anybody want to offer thoughts on any portions of the report?
May I go?
Yes, David?
The statements that have come out from us in response to the incident, I think, are very well drafted and well said. I got a number of questions from people saying, what are you people doing about this? And so it's like, what are we doing about white supremacy? What are we doing about racism? Well, we're working on it. Are we working on it as hard as we should? I don't know. I know that the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee gets frustrated. They're all very, very busy people with, and they're very, very interested in feeling helpless sometimes. What exactly can we do? I think that there maybe should be some more publication of the working group study document that was produced. The Human Rights and the HRIC is still in the process of reviewing that to try to give some substantive comments. But that is one thing, and I don't know. There is a sense of, what are you people doing? Well, I guess we're part of the you people, so I haven't got an answer because I don't know how we defeat racism which exists in our community, how we defeat attitudes of white supremacy which exist in this community, except continuing to try to do a day at a time the work that we do and saying the things that we do. So I don't have any further answer about that, except I hear that people are asking, what are you people doing about this?
Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you, David, for those comments. What we people can do is to continue to discuss, identify, connect the community together and not ignore it, period. So I think by discussing it openly and outreach to everybody, we can accomplish some good things. Thank you.
I agree too, and thank you, Chairman Trask, for calling us and letting us know exactly what happened. I think working with the Welcoming Committee, this is something that we are working very hard at this. And I thank everybody that participated in that committee again, and we will get there.
Matt, anything?
Sure, I think we all realize that this is kind of permeated our society, especially over the past 4 or 5 years. And so it's incumbent upon us to just speak up and speak out and say that it's not acceptable, and not just, shrug it off as if it was just, something that's normal. So I think the Welcoming group did a great job with that report, and I think it's just to keep it on the front burner.
I want to thank you all for allowing such a rapid response. Actions like these require a strong and immediate statement. We don't have to know who did it. We don't have to know why they did it. We don't have to know. We just have to know that it's wrong. It's abhorrent and it's unacceptable. And we have to say that as leaders, public leaders. And I thank you for letting me speak on behalf of the board. This was a document that was reviewed before it was sent out by the police department, by the town administration, by the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, and by myself. We did have some edits and tweaks to it, but it's important that we get ahead of this. We don't have to wait for the police investigation to finalize. We don't, to say that this is not part of our community. There's a saying that what you allow persists, and we can't allow this. We have to fight this immediately and strongly. Part of my work and Select Board Member Bernard's work on the Welcoming Committee included all of the recommendations we had just the meeting before. I think this further underlines the necessity for an inclusion, a position in town of inclusion. Beverly and Salem both have permanent personnel in the administration dedicated to this, and I think that we have to consider strongly that direction. I'm not saying we haven't, and I'm not saying that literally it came out as a recommendation 2 weeks, and the board has asked the town manager to investigate this. So I want this to become a real direction we take. The schools have a different standard because they have to worry about the protection of minors. And there is no excuse of kids being kids. They don't have the mental capacity of understanding what some of the language is and some of the actions are. I do think they have the similar responsibility as the town administration did, which is to say, this incident happened, we are investigating, we are going to follow up. It is not part of our schools. It is not part of what we accept in our schools. Hate and prejudice is learned. It's not inherent, it's not natural, it's learned. And I don't expect the schools to be the social education arm necessarily, but I do expect that the administration, the town administration and the school administration reinforce the values that this is unacceptable by clearly stating it. As we've all learned, this is a small community and there are no secrets. If something happens, it's known. And I'd rather have a statement made, a statement addressing it, a statement identifying it, out there saying, we know this is happening, we're acting on it, we'll do what we can, and we'll keep you updated, as opposed to not making the statement public and having the rumor mill fill in the vacuum of information. So I'd like to also suggest that we work with our counterparts on the school committee to make sure that any actions are clearly communicated as to having happened, and that they take a strong hand at making sure they make the student body know these are unacceptable actions. I'm not suggesting that this is a gap in any manner, but I think in the same method we made a strong statement, I think that all of the town business should be equally as strongly stated that this is not a community that accepts that. So, and I thank you all for taking my call and supporting the fact that went out quickly. We wanted to get ahead of, again, get ahead of the social media, get ahead of the rumor mills, get ahead of the places where a vacuum of information leads to misinformation. So, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Town Manager?
That's all, thank you.
All right.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That banner can go up. Correspondence, Select Board, new business, previous new public business, Select Board closing comments. Select Board Member Bernard, would you start?
Sure. I really don't have much new business. I think that what you did, Gardner, about the episode, like we talked about, was really good. And I love the communication. I think that's the key with everything and within the town. Really no other new business. Happy to see the Soucy Memorial. That made me very happy, and for our duck race. When we do our duck race for Kiwanis, that will be great. But no, I really don't have anything.
Thank you. Select Board Member Duggan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of items here. The first is some legislation that Governor Baker submitted last week concerning the extension of COVID emergency measures. And one item in particular stood out to me, and that is to allow town committees and boards to continue to meet remotely until at least September 1st and potentially forever. I've gotten a number of calls from residents who don't have the technical wherewithal to actually join some of these remote meetings, and specifically to offer comments. And so, as we're doing tonight, we're meeting in public. I think it's really behooves all boards and committees to do so going forward. And I don't think, there's some boards and commissions that haven't met in public since last February of last year. So really, that's kind of a disservice, I think, to the people that these committees and boards serve. And so hopefully going forward that we can direct those boards and committees to actually meet in person. Some do already when they are able to, and so kudos to them.
If I could, may I comment just briefly? So I think we did offer broad discretion to the boards and committees in the previous months. The expectation is that we'll be going back to in-person by mid-June. We're following this legislation as well, and to the extent that it would stay with us in the future, it would be to expand opportunity, not limit. So, for example, the board may meet in person if a member is away but could otherwise participate remotely. We would certainly take advantage of that. And if they're away, eventually to incorporate public comment without the public actually having to be with us. One of the great inhibitors for public engagement is a lot of two parents working. They don't have the ability to come to some of these meetings. So if it stays with us, and we think it will in some form, we want to try to figure out a way to leverage it, because we agree we're pivoting back. By mid-June, we'll be back to in-person, but we're also monitoring that.
Okay, great. So that hybrid approach, that seems like a good compromise for everyone. The next item is for the Traffic Advisory Committee, so I'm the new liaison, replacing Mr. Bennett. And so we met last Wednesday, so the two items that kind of stuck out for me. The first is with the police department. During the past year, during the COVID restrictions, they had reduced the amount of selective enforcement that they were providing or performing. And for example, they would, areas where there's significant amount of traffic violations or crashes or citizens' complaints, they target those areas if they're not in an active patrol mode. And so going forward now after June 1st, you'll see more of that selective enforcement activity taking place. So residents should be happy about that. And then the other thing is about several citizens have brought up bike lanes. You might see in other communities where along the side on a shoulder you'll have like slash marks. And so the DPW is evaluating Hobart Street after the paving is completed. They're going to see if there's ability to kind of reduce the size of the lanes a little bit and bring the fog lines out away from the curb to kind of offer a little bit more sense of use for people riding bicycles. We know a lot of communities in the area have done that. Unfortunately, our roads aren't really wide enough to have dedicated bike lanes that can be signed. But I think this is a good start. Reducing the size of the lanes also has a benefit of traffic calming. People tend to not drive as fast when the lanes look narrower than they are. And then just one last item is I mentioned this a couple weeks ago about the Peabody Power Peaker plant. And this is a proposal by the Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company to build a new power plant at the rear of the Pulaski Street Industrial Park along the Waters River. And it involves participation by 14 municipal power plants. Danvers is not one of them, but on the North Shore there's Wakefield, Peabody, and Marblehead. And then there's other communities also as far west as Chicopee. This is a 60 megawatt facility. It's going to have a 90-foot high smokestack, and this, in addition to being able to burn natural gas, it also will be able to burn fuel oil, and it will have a 200,000 gallon oil tank. There's a grassroots opposition group called Breathe Clean North Shore, and they've been meeting weekly and getting petitions going to kind of try to have these other municipal plants kind of withdraw their support. In addition, our state rep Sally Kearns and then our state senator Joan Lovely have both sent letters in opposition, and primarily due to the health impact it would have on residents that live within close proximity to this plant. So that's the current status. And the Salem News has written quite a few articles in May, at least a half a dozen articles. So if people were interested in learning more about it, they could just go to Salem News website and search on this. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Cable Television Committee met actually the same night as our last meeting. They continue to negotiate with Comcast as to the term of the agreement. Progress is being made, and I'm told, well, I was there, but I don't understand it all. They tell me the situation is under control, and I trust that. The Human Rights and Inclusion Committee heard a little bit about it tonight. Very active. The next meeting, by the way, will be June 17th, and I think that our meetings are televised. Let me see. The night after tomorrow, which is going to be June 3rd, there will be an event out here in front of the town hall, partially live and partially virtual, which will be, I think, the 8th or 9th or 10th annual raising of the rainbow flag in front of the town hall. That's at 5 o'clock. At 4:30, the Danvers Police Department have invited the Inclusion Committee and others to the police station, where they will have a raising of the rainbow flag at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I'm told that the rainbow flag will be flown on the schools in Danvers. I'm told that today the fire chief was in connection with Eileen Page, who is our staff coordinator, who's doing a phenomenal job of organizing things, that both fire stations will have the rainbow flag. And there are several citizens who have requested flags, which I'm going to supply privately to them. And also, the committee will supply a rainbow flag to any resident of Danvers who wants to fly one on their property. The Inclusion Committee continues to the best of its ability and time to study the working group document. All I can say is everybody is so busy, but the people on that committee, they are real doers, but they are so busy in any event. We're going to try to be proactively responsive to the action items that are identified in that report. The committee, of course, is concerned with the noose. We've already talked about the noose. Let me see. I think that's all I have to report on. Oh yeah, one other thing. About a year ago, it was in the aftermath of the September demonstration on the lawn here that members of the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee designed a yard sign, which was then, I thought it was beautiful. It was funded by the Friends of the Human Rights, and we have a funding subsidiary, funded the production of, I don't know, 300 or 400 yard signs. There's only, a couple dozen around the town so far, and I'm kicking myself because I wanted to bring one and put it here tonight, and also bring one to each of the select board members to see if you'll put them in front of your house. When you walk out, there's one on my fence across the street, and it's been there for 8 or 9 months. We're going to oh yes, on June 5th, which is this coming Saturday, there is going to be a HRIC little event on the sidewalk in front of Kathmandu with rainbow flags, prizes. Somebody has threatened to bake cookies at home for that. Sounds good to me. And once again, they'll have the yard signs there, and perhaps make an effort to ask shopkeepers up and down Maple Street if they'd be willing to put one in there. It's a unity in the community, no hate here kind of a thing. I think it's quite attractive, and it's on my fence if anyone wants to see it on the way out. Thank you.
Excuse me, David, what is the date of the flag raising here at Town Hall?
Here, Dan, is this coming Thursday.
Thursday.
Which is June 3rd, 5 o'clock here, 4:30 at the police station, and the little rainbow event on the sidewalk will be Saturday, which is the 5th.
Right, what time on the 5th?
9 o'clock.
9 a.m. Thank
And
you
there'll be prizes and cookies.
for showing up.
And little rainbow flags, yeah.
Thank you, David.
Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you, yes. On May 27th, I attended a virtual meeting on rapid recovery communities. I think it was, they invited business owners. They're running the second stage of a three-stage program. This is a non-competitive program part of Baker Polito Recovery Plan to revitalize downtowns. We're mixed in with the city of Peabody for the study purpose. They had sent out a survey early in this year. The other morning, they went through an analysis of short, medium, and long-term recovery goals, and they're going to recommend projects of actions to reflect community consensus. And then the third phase will collect the standardized data to demonstrate that COVID-19 impacts on downtowns throughout the Commonwealth. This is really a short-term project, and they were talking about sidewalks, facades, awnings, wayfinding signs, and population trends. And they rated some of these categories. They actually rated downtown Danvers as a B for facades, which I disagreed with, B being almost good. We have so many different facades downtown, it's confusing. They rated wayfinding signs as a B as well, and I disagree with that. We've never put up the wayfinding signs to identify our parking lots downtown. And I thought we had those signs to go up. And they talked about population trends, but it's short-term, so they didn't take into consideration the 120 units at Maple Square, which I thought was to the point this is short-term, and that project hasn't even been filed yet. So they really didn't consider that. So it was interesting. I don't know what good will come out of it, but I did learn a few things. And then later this week, I didn't attend the Maple Square meeting in person or live. I know Matt was there, but I did watch it Saturday morning to get a sense of what's going on down there. The planning board has a big project in front of them with a lot of difficult questions to be answered, most importantly, zoning relief and density, to have retail, not to have retail. I mean, those are things that they'll work out, but from a consumer resident of the town, I thought the project as presented is not pedestrian friendly. It's not bicycle friendly. So I hope that they look at those issues. There's a lot of things that they need to look at per zoning, per that relief that we came up with, a 40R back in 2017, bicycle racks, parks, et cetera. So they've got a lot of work to do. So we'll be watching that carefully. And a comment I have on recent events is shame on the U.S. Senate for not putting together a committee to study the worst attack on our national government since the War of 1812. For shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll offer a few closing comments. We each receive emails, and sometimes they're addressed to all of us. Sometimes they're addressed to us singly, but we understand that sometimes they address us each individually, the same email. As chairman, I will, if I offer a response to an email, usually including the town manager for some direction or action, I'll let you all know. You are obviously welcome to answer however you want, to whomever you want. I do remind you to be cautious about the open meeting law, and I won't offer an opinion or based on what's going on. I'll just simply set direction that I'll be asking the town manager to follow up or some specific points of fact. But please, feel free to contact whoever you'd like to contact, however you'd like to contact them, but again, be cautious not to include the other board members so that we can maintain the open meeting conditions. Also, I believe that I today finished my annual ethics training online, the Massachusetts Government Office Ethics Training. We're asked to go through that every 2 years. I think Jen Breaker sent out an email not long ago asking that by the end of June, we all comply. Simply take it online, You can save the certificate at the end to a PDF and send it off to her as acting human resources person so that she can keep it on file and we can make sure we're all on top of where we need to be. An upcoming not legislative item has identified, and the reason I asked if other members were members of Historical Society is I think it would be beneficial for each of us, and I can't remember the statute, but I'll ask the town manager to remind us again what it is. We should declare those affiliations we have and ahead of and have it on record. For example, I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus. I'm a member of the Polish Club. I'm a member of the Historical Society. My spouse and my daughter both work for the Danvers Public Schools. People know this, but declaring it and having it on record helps us identify that there, and we do at times have to say we abstain. By having this on record, it's a identification of what Kiwanis. Whatever party may come before us as a board, the foreknowledge that we have an association with some of them and can act impartially and judiciously is important. So I'll ask the town manager to send out that statute in whatever form we may have to fill out and keep it on record just to say this is who I'm affiliated with in town and that I believe I can act impartially or will abstain as needed.
It's the, and actually Attorney DeLucas here, but it's the appearance of conflict of interest form. I believe it's on the State Ethics Commission webpage. And in most cases, simply disclosing your dual roles is sufficient, particularly if the second assignment is one that you serve in by nature of being a select board member. That is sort of by default,
right.
Not an issue, but in instances where you may be a member of the Historical Society and then vote on an item before this board as a select board member, disclosing that typically covers you for that. The belt and suspenders approach is to fill out the conflict of interest form, which says I am a member of both of these entities, I have no financial interest, and then you would file that with the clerk's office or the manager's office and you'd be fine. I can happily send that around, and if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out.
That's all I have. I will turn it back to Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you, especially this weekend, but please remember the veterans. When you see a veteran, thank them. And this Memorial Day weekend, while it wasn't conducive for a parade because of COVID, etc., I got to see the police and fire go by downtown twice, once on the right on Elm Street and then on Cherry Street with my granddaughter. So you had a great kick watching that. So, but please remember the veterans.
Thank you. This time, the board will adjourn to executive session to discuss for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to litigation and not to return to public sessions. I'll take a voice vote. Select Board Member Bennett.
Yes.
Select Board Member Bernard.
Yes.
Select Board Member Duggan.
Yes.
Select Board Member Mills.
Yes.
Select Board Member Trask also says yes. Thank you, Danvers. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
You staying here or going upstairs?
We'll stay right here.
Okay.
Can you just confirm that the